Tonight on Paranormal.
I went out to go to the bathroom. I noticed no one was home. I didn't hear any noise upstairs, didn't hear any noise throughout the house. I come back in to the bedroom. I was like, oh, your parents are gone to go get food. And Lauren was like, no, my mom's upstairs.
Because I thought she was.
Because she had said that she heard footsteps upstairs.
After me and Steph had this conversation, we heard it again.
So residential cases are really the bread and butter of what most paranormal groups investigate, the homes and residences of people like you and me.
Going into the home of clients, you don't usually have that much of a rapport with the client beforehand. There's like an initial interview and things, but you're relatively going into a stranger's home, which of course has its own dangerous elements.
Although we make every effort to screen our clients before, you never really know what you're walking into.
People can be unpredictable. There can be certain, psychological things that could explain any type of experiences that they're having. So there are a lot of things that you need to take into consideration when you're going into a private home.
Crypto began working on the PALAZZO residence investigation in fall of 2015.
Located in the town of Stony Point, 40 miles north of New York City, in New York's Hudson Valley, the two-story residence is home to the PALAZZO family, who for years have claimed to experienced unexplained phenomenon within their home.
I actually know the clients, Lauren PALAZZO, Stephanie, and their family. Lauren and her family have reported some interesting things within their home. Nearly all the members of the household have claimed to hear the disembodied sound of footsteps walking on the second floor when nobody's up there. They've reported cold spots or cold sensations in the living room, objects allegedly moving by themselves and disappearing with no explanation, and the smell of wood smoke. One of the interesting elements of the PALAZZO case is this raincoat that's in the basement of the location. Lauren and her family said that the raincoat has been in the home the entire time they've owned the property and was left by some former resident, but nobody actually knows by whom. There's family legend that if the raincoat gets touched or moved, maybe bad things will happen in the location. And both Lauren's parents and her grandparents have always treated this raincoat with some amount of reservation and apprehension and have pretty much left it alone and undisturbed the entire time they've owned the property.
New York State's Hudson Valley, an area over 7,000 square miles and encompassing over 140 towns and cities, is a region as cultured and gentrified as it is wild and unforgiving. Today, much of the land remains a backcountry wilderness. Deer and even bears still roaming freely in many of its communities and throughout the sets of television productions like Orange is the New Black. Originating from springs in the Adirondack Mountains in the north, the Hudson River flows over 500 kilometers to the Atlantic and is not only the region's defining natural feature, but one that has played an important role in the country's history. George Washington himself used the town of Tappan, less than 20 miles from Stony Point, as one of his headquarters during the American Revolution. And Stony Point itself saw combat during the Revolution on July 16, 1779, when over 1,000 Continental Army soldiers clashed with a British garrison, an engagement that was ultimately a losing one for the Continental troops. But the Hudson Valley is perhaps best known for the 19th century movement of landscape paintings that was inspired by the region's distinct character, the Hudson River School. But beneath the facade of wineries, museums, antique shops, and more Shakespeare in the park than you can shake an effing stick at, there is a shaded history of mysterious and unexplained events. These are, after all, the very woods in which Washington Irvine set the Headless Horseman upon Ichabod Crane in his 1820s classic. Tales of monsters, strange lights in the skies, and bumps in the night. Reports of UFO phenomenon and even Sasquatch can be traced back to pre-European times. It is also home to some of the most infamous and famous reputedly haunted locations in the Northeast, including Letchworth Village, the massive derelict psychiatric hospital complex in Haverstraw, and the Ackley House in Nyack, which holds the reputation as America's only legally haunted house. Over the years, Crypto has investigated other locations in the Hudson Valley, including the Summit School in Nyack and the historic Haversley Barn in Tivoli.
So I'm currently on my way up to see Lauren and Stephanie at their new apartment. I'll be meeting Pam on site. She lives up pretty close to them, so it'd be good to have her there. Just gonna talk to them, get their stories, get them on camera, and see what we can learn about what they've been experiencing in the home, maybe get some history of the location, and just work the case. It's a great area. I'm so jealous of all the green out here. Well, I am basically, here we are. Alrighty, well, thank you for taking the time to sit with us, and thank you for letting us into your family's house. This is really cool.
My name's Lauren. I'm 25. I work at Yonkers Raceway as a racing inspector.
And we're here to talk about your family house. Did you grow up there your whole life?
I moved into Cedar Flats when I was 14, but before that, it was my grandparents' house since before I was born. Shirley and Tim.
Okay.
They're still alive, doing well. So if I wasn't living there already, I was spending, at least a weekend there a month.
As far as activity goes, unusual experiences, what personally have you experienced in the home?
I know the sounds of when somebody is walking and when somebody is not in the house, and just like the normal, wear and tear of the house and the creaking for a house settling. I know the difference between the sounds. But I'm sitting in the room and I can hear definite footsteps of somebody walking from one end of the upstairs to the other end, and there's nobody else in the house. Kind of throws you off, kind of makes you want to go upstairs and check, and when there's nobody up there, like nothing to me making that noise, it freaks you out.
How many times would you say you've heard the footsteps?
Oh, over my entire life?
Sure.
God, I don't even think I can count. I heard them probably the last month that me and Steph lived in that house, it's a normal occurrence.
I'm Stephanie Spencer, and I work at Nyack Hospital as a patient safety attendant.
And how do you know Lauren?
She's my fiance.
So obviously we're here to talk about her house and what's happened there. How long did you live in the location for?
Approximately around 8 months,
And
I think.
Who lives there?
Her mother, Donna, her father, her brother.
During the time you lived there, did you ever have any sort of unusual, or for lack of a better word, paranormal experience?
Personally, no.
How would you describe the overall feeling in the home?
I never felt like I was being watched or anything like that. I never felt like there was necessarily a presence, and I was left alone. I mean, there would be days where I would be the only one home.
The second biggest thing that I could say that really creeped me out was, not so much creeped me out, but definitely made me feel that there was a presence in the house. When I was having a really hard time, I think I want to say like 10th or 11th grade in high school, and I was just at a really low point in my life. And I was on the front porch in the rocking chairs in a really still, like, really nice summer day, no wind, like the trees aren't blowing anywhere. We had a flag on our front porch at that time that wasn't blowing, it was just hanging straight down. And I was talking to my pop-up, because I don't really talk to God when I need to talk to somebody. I talk to my pop-up. I was talking to him and just saying, like, you know, like, I really need a sign to say this is all gonna be okay, and then I just, like, I have somebody backing me up. I just really need to know that I'm going to be okay, because I don't know if I could do this anymore. And then all of a sudden I start hearing a creak, because again, it's a really old front porch, and I look over to my right, and the other rocking chair is just moving back and forth.
What was your pop-up's full name?
William Creighton Marr. I don't think he had another middle name.
Do you have a picture of him you might be able to show us?
In my room, yeah. Before we moved into the house that we're in now, we lived in Benson Street. That was where my pop-up actually died, in that house. And then when he died, then me and my mom, my dad, my brother, and me all moved to Cedar Flat, or the house that we live in now.
Does anyone in your family has ever claimed to be psychic or sensitive openly? Do you notice any patterns to the activity in the home? Do you notice drug and alcohol at a particular time? Do you drink? Do you smoke pot? Has anybody in the home ever done anything like hold a seance, play with a Ouija board, tried to record EVP, anything like that?
No, actually, which I've always wanted to get a Ouija board.
Do you have any idea of what is causing these experiences, who or what?
There could be a couple ghosts in there for us, as far as I know. If there's a raincoat man, as we like to say, I would like to know his name, because I feel bad calling him Raincoat Man.
So some people have said, I guess Lauren's inferred, that maybe this is a result of this raincoat that's in the basement.
Yes.
What do you know about this coat?
I know that it's been there since before her grandmother, even before her grandmother moved in.
I know that my grandparents always knew not to touch the coat. They were just told at the closing of the house, just, you know, leave it alone, don't touch it. We don't know what's gonna happen, just don't touch it.
Did that strike them as unusual? Or?
Oh, absolutely.
Did they ask why?
My grandparents aren't really like those kind of people. So I think they probably just went with it and were like, oh, okay, no worries, we're not gonna touch it.
The coat, you say, has never been touched. Have you ever touched it?
As far as I know, it's never been touched.
Object attachment theory, the theory that a spirit or some sort of paranormal activity could attach itself to a particular object. I would say the most haunted object in pop culture would be Annabelle the doll.
Has anybody else experienced activity in the home, to your knowledge?
My mom has definitely heard the footsteps before. I'm not sure if she's had anything else happen. My dad, I mean, his entire life, he was always really sensitive to paranormal activity. I think he's told you stories about the house that he grew up in, but he's had a couple more weirder things happen. And he's mentioned to me in the past that things in the basement, that he'll put certain tools like right on the first shelf when you walk in, and a couple weeks later he'll go and look for it, and it's like closer to the raincoat.
What, if anything, do you hope that we would be able to learn or discover from our research?
I just want to see if there really is somebody there, because the house does feel like it has an extra occupant. So I guess just an explanation, or maybe like even like who he is, he or she. I believe it's a he though.
Why?
It's the history of the house. I believe the raincoat, my history might be wrong on this, again it's passed down from family members, but I believe the raincoat was a gamekeeper of either Rockland County or Stony Point.
Crypto's research determined the home was built in 1793 and was originally the residence of the Belding family. Everett Knapp, who is the game protector of Rockland County in the early 1900s, lived there for a time. Whether Everett Knapp was the individual to abandon the raincoat is impossible to determine, unless it were examined and some name tag found on its inside, as no markings are present on the exterior. The coat, however, has never been disturbed to the family's recollection.
So after speaking with Lauren and her family and hearing the story of the raincoat, I began coming up with an idea of an experiment to try to test whether or not there was any actual paranormal activity associated with that object. The plan was to conduct 2 investigations. The first would act more or less as our control. We would set up cameras and other monitoring equipment throughout the location and then proceed with a fairly typical investigation. Although the coat would be monitored, we would make no attempt to move or disturb it. During the second investigation, we would set up cameras and other equipment just as before, yet at some point during that investigation, we would move the coat to see if that created any increase in activity. The key was we weren't going to tell Lauren or her family during which investigation we moved the coat so as not to bias their experiences in the days and weeks following our investigations. We conducted our first field investigation of the PALAZZO home in spring of 2016. When Pam and I arrived at the location, we were met by Lauren and her family, and then took our first set of baseline readings before conducting a sweep with the thermal imaging camera.
When we take baseline readings, we're measuring various environmental factors, such as temperature, humidity, electromagnetic fields, radiation, and other such things. The reason why we consider them to be so important is because we are trying to find a correlation between the environmental changes and claims of paranormal activity.
Right, let's just take a stroll around. We just want to get some FLIR shots of the house from multiple angles.
For the most part, everything looks about the same.
The thermal imaging camera is a really interesting piece of technology. It sees hot and cold temperature changes in video format, and we use the thermal camera for finding often natural causes for claims of paranormal activity. Nesting animals, moisture damage, and general drafts.
What about this over here?
About the same temperature as the rest of the basement.
I wanted Lauren and Stephanie to come back and participate in part of the investigation because they had been family members there. And I thought especially having Lauren there might help elicit some of the phenomenon that her family had been reporting. After concluding our FLIR sweep, we started to set up our cameras and other equipment throughout the home. That night we ran 7 DVR cameras, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway, one in the living room, 2 cameras in the cellar, and 2 cameras outside, one covering the grounds and the other camera to cover the porch, where Lauren had experienced a rocking chair moving by itself.
We also set up motion sensors, audio recorders, and a laser grid in the cellar. A laser grid is a unit that projects a pattern of lasers to detect the movement of solid objects.
In addition to the laser grid, we also placed 2 EMF detectors, one a alternating current meter, the other a direct current meter, as well as a digital thermometer directly below the raincoat, recorded by their own independent camera. With our cameras and other equipment rolling, we decided to conduct some experiments to see if we could come up with any natural explanations for the phenomenon that the clients had reported.
All right, so there's a vent here by the bed. Lauren, is that the sound? Like if you walk across the room?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pam and I tried walking around in the master bedroom, and when you walk on the floor up there, the floor does creak pretty loudly in the same way that it supposedly creaks when nobody is in the room. For our first EVP session that night, Lauren and I decided to sit in the living room. We had multiple cameras set up, as well as EMF detectors and an audio recorder. We just sat for a while, listened, observed the environment. The house was pretty quiet. After about 15-20 minutes, we decided to switch it up and conduct a little bit of EVP work. Good evening. My name is Nick Smith. I'm sitting here with my friend Lauren, and we're here to speak with you. If there is anybody here in this home, How many people are in this house? If there is anybody here, can you tell us your name, please? Or anything you'd like about yourself? Do you know who this girl is sitting across from me?
Are you happy we're here? Are you my papa?
If there is anybody here and you would like to communicate with us, if you approach these devices or wave your hand in front of them, we may be able to know that you're here. If there is anybody here, can you walk towards the devices on the table in front of me in the count of 3, please? 1, 2, 3.
After Nick and Lauren did an EVP session up in the living room, Lauren and myself went downstairs into the cellar to conduct an EVP session. All right, my name is Pam, and this is Lauren. We're here to talk with you if there's anybody down here. If there is, could you tell us your name? Did you live here? Is that your raincoat that's hanging up over there? Is your name Everett? If you're down here, could you give us a sign to let you know? Or let us know?
How many people are in the room right now?
Do you like sharing a home with this family? The cellar was creepy in the same sense that any old basement is creepy, but we didn't have anything strange happen.
After Pam and Lauren concluded their EVP session in the cellar, Lauren and Stephanie head back to their apartment, and Pam and I continued with our investigation of the home.
It is currently 2:43 a.m. We've been taking baseline readings. We've done 2 EVP sessions. We're going to go outside and see how high the EMF fields are around the electric meter. And then I guess more EVP sessions. Yep, that's high.
Yeah, that's all right.
Electromagnetic hypersensitivity is a sensitivity to electromagnetic fields that can cause symptoms such as nausea, vertigo, audio and visual hallucinations. The electric meters tend to give off high electromagnetic fields, so we wanted to see how far that carried outside of the house. We did an EMF sweep of the deck because Lauren had an experience on the deck with a rocking chair moving. Yeah, nothing crazy. Not from down there anyway. Yeah, nothing.
Pam and I decided to head down to conduct another EVP session in the cellar. We had a couple cameras with us. I had a handheld mini DV and the thermal imaging camera, and Pam was using a parabolic microphone to record audio. The cellar of the PALAZZO residence, 3:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Is there anybody down here with us right now? Who does this coat on the wall in front of me belong to? Is this coat yours? Do you get mad or does it upset you when people move this coat or touch it? Coat really isn't giving off any kind of a heat sig.
Do you live in this house? Is your last name Knapp or Benson?
Can you give us some kind of sign of your presence?
Did you die here? Would you be upset if we took the jacket out of the house?
You want to head upstairs, see what's
Sure.
going on up there? Is there anybody here in the living room with us? That's my stomach growling.
You hungry?
I might hit up a brownie in a little bit. How many people are in this room right now? Just heard a tiny creak over there by the camera.
Sounded kind of like the wood settling
Yeah.
in the window. It's similar to the noises that my house makes.
When Donna, the woman who lives here, sits in this room sometimes, she can hear footsteps coming from the room upstairs. Are you the one making those footsteps? If it's not you, do you know who is making those footsteps?
So we stopped investigating around 5 and let the cameras keep rolling, and I got a couple hours of sleep after that.
We turned the cameras off, I think around 8 o'clock in the morning. It's always pretty difficult having to pack everything up, bring it back into the car after you've been working all night. Well, I'm just getting ready to begin evidence review for the PALAZZO house investigation. The investigation was fairly typical. We hit the place hard until just about 8 o'clock in the morning. We really have to look at the evidence incredibly closely to see if anything might have shown up that we didn't see or experience ourselves. That night we recorded over 50 hours of video between 10 cameras and well over 8 hours of audio. Evidence review is a very important part of the case. You have to take it very seriously, and you really need to take your time when you're doing it. When you're reviewing something like the DVR system, contrary to what people see on television, you really can't watch it in the split quad view because it's just too much and your eyes have a tendency to wander or go out of focus, so you really have to watch every channel independently. Nothing anomalous showed up that night on video or audio, and all the environmental conditions that we measured remained within normal parameters.
We took readings around the coat, but it didn't seem to give off any anomalous readings.
We were able to come up with a few potential natural explanations for the claims of activity. The home is a wooden structure, and as wood expands and contracts with temperature and humidity changes, this will often cause popping and creaking sounds that I think very possibly could account for the footstep type sounds that the family has reported there.
One of the claims was that Donna had felt cold spots while sitting on the couch, and there was a vent on the floor next to the couch, and it's possible that she could have been feeling drafts coming from the cellar up into the living room through that vent.
The first investigation we did of the PALAZZO residence was always intended to act more as our control and give us a chance to try to come up with real-world explanations for the claims of the activity, as well as monitoring the location without interfering with the raincoat itself. At this point, we really don't have enough evidence to support the presence of paranormal activity in the home. But the next step for us at this point is we got to go back there. We got to mess with their raincoat.
After the first night that we spent there, we didn't have anything happen, so I guess it's a little hard to say, but I'm definitely excited to move the coat in the basement, see what happens.